So recently, we saw the debut of the second installment of the Spiderverse franchise with the release of Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. And of course, I went to go see it, because, well, the first one was really good. And for me, it completely changed the game for animation, especially in terms of style. I mean, it had such a dynamic visual style, especially for its action sequences, and we've seen that replicated since quite a lot. I mean, take a look at the bad guys from DreamWorks or Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. They both draw very heavily from the first Spider-Verse film, plus it won an Oscar. So, obviously, it was well received, and it had a lot to live up to in that regard. And so I ended up going to see it the other day, and here's the TLDR. It was good. Very good. You should go and see it. Hell, the proof's in the pudding. As of me writing this, it has a 95% critical score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 96% audience score. Pretty much universal acclaim right there. And yeah, you can't say that it's not deserved. It is a very good film. Is it perfect? Nah, I wouldn't say that. It did have a couple problems in my eyes, but for the most part, it was an excellent sequel. Sony is still going strong for Spider-Man, at least this version of Spider-Man, and this film's no exception. It fires on all cylinders, and I'm expecting that it's probably going to make quite the splash at the box office. I mean, more than the first one did at least. 384 million is nothing to sniff at, but I expect that it's going to surpass that number by quite the margin going forward. It's built up a massive following after all, and so yeah, enough preamble. Let's get into things. Okay, so I guess you can't really talk about the film without dropping some spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film and you care about spoilers, drop out now. And so if you're still here, let's keep going. Oddly enough, I think the story itself is both the high point and the low point of the film. Our story, well, it's a lot more ambitious this time around than the first one was. There are more story threads, and it's deeper exploration into a lot of other characters. So, in basic terms, for our story, Miles is going through the classic Spider-Man phase of not being able to balance his personal life and his role as Spider-Man. And I feel like this is something that literally every single second Spider-Man film has to deal with. It's a tried and tested method to develop some drama and dramatic tension and give your plot something to springboard from. But with that being said, it is also a bit of a tired trope, let's be real. Anyway, it turns out that when he defeated Fisk with the other spider people, a random dude ended up getting blasted by radiation which caused his body to mutate. Now he's covered with interdimensional portals that let him travel through space and into different parallel universes. After clashing with Miles early on, where he's mocked relentlessly as a villain of the week, over the course of the film, he continues to develop his powers by going into alternate universe Alchemax facilities to charge himself up with the Collider to make himself more powerful. And this is all with a desire to destroy Miles' life, which Miles learns from the Spider Society. And of course this means the death of his father. A canon event to set his universe on track, as Miles' Collider had brought a radioactive spider into his universe by mistake. This spider, instead of biting the Miles of the previous universe, bit this Miles, which in turn made him a Spider-Man, which in turn ensured that he was there for the fight of Spider-Man versus Fisk, which ended up with blonde Spider-Man getting killed, which wasn't supposed to happen. But it seems that the universe is now course correcting, and now the new canon wants Jefferson dead. And yeah, a big portion of Miles' storyline in this film is learning about these facts and struggling to comprehend it all, whilst also meeting and bonding with a bunch of different spider people. And this all culminates with the reveal that they all knew this had to happen, even people he trusted like Gwen and Peter B. Parker. And thus they have a huge brawl across Miguel O'Hara's universe, before Miles tries to go back home, only to arrive in the wrong universe, the universe that his spider came from, which as a result had no Spider-Man to protect it, and thus is suffering because of it. On top of that, we get a bunch of stories about Gwen and her troubled relationship with her dad and her tragic friendship with her universe's version of Peter Parker. On top of that, we have her inner conflict with helping Miguel or helping Miles, and then also a whole bunch of smaller side pieces. So yeah, like I said, the story itself is both the strength and the weakness of the movie. It's the strength in that, well, there's no really other way to describe it other than it's well written. It's good. They were a lot more ambitious here. They had more plot threads, more character arcs, more storylines. They added a whole lot more depth to a bunch of the different characters. I liked the increased focus on Gwen in this film, sort of trading roles with Peter B. Parker and gaining more prominence and backstory. And I like that none of this world building and storytelling, or at least the side storytelling, really distracted too much from Miles and his story. They don't sacrifice the main character's arc to flesh out the world. And that was good. It enhanced the film. Or at least, it enhanced the film for the first 2 hours, because that's where things start to, well, not fall apart, but drag on, because there's so many different threads, many of which are so intertwined with one another that you end up needing to make the film very long. And so they end up with a film that, it just ran too long, that's all it is. I think after that first battle against Miguel where Miles escapes, that almost feels like the true end of the film. They had epic narration, the music swells, and then they move on again and keep going. And again, over and over. You reach a point where the music swells and the action seems to pinnacle. And so you assume that things are going to wrap up right there. It happens again when Miles realizes that he's not in his own universe, only for the movie to keep going after that and have the alternate Miles reveal as Prowler. And so you sort of burn out on all of that, or at least I did a little bit. And then on top of that, there's really no resolution to anything. Like, yeah, it's a two-parter film, but at the same time, this means you end up feeling somewhat unsatisfied. Because like I said, all the threads are so intertwined. You don't get a resolution for almost any of them, or even come close to a resolution, because they want to save that, so they can go boom, 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 boom. Because if you finish one, the reality is you have to start finishing them all more rapidly. And so in the end, everything gets put off for the next film, which doesn't come out for like a year. Which, whilst it's not the end of the world by any means, I don't think you can hold it up as an example of excellent storytelling either. Just tangles things in a massive narrative web and leaves it there. So yeah, as the first part of a two-parter film, it does everything right story-wise, but as a standalone film, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's not enough to make the film bad, but enough to make it less cohesive than the first one, I think. But like I said, I would have to say that's probably the film's only downside, like literally the only one, because in every other aspect, it's a triumph. Like I touched on earlier, the characterization of all our Spideys, it's great. Each of the major players gets their time to shine and carve out their own role, especially Gwen and Miguel. But we also got a lot of really interesting minor players too. Spider-Punk, Spider-Man India. Each of these minor characters have such defined and contrasting personalities. And so nothing feels samey, and every conversation unique and diverse. Makes the dialogue sequences really quite funny. You never know what to expect. But that being said, I think the best part of the writing in terms of character is actually Miguel. I love the way he's written. He doesn't crack jokes like the other Spideys. He isn't a goofball, and he's completely serious, the straight man. But that in and of itself gives a lot of opportunity for humor as the other characters play off of him. But at the same time, it lends him a lot of gravitas for the more emotional parts of the film. As the antagonist, I enjoy that he's not evil for the sake of being evil. He actually has a point. A point that by changing things, you can destroy everything in the universe, the multiverse, the Spiderverse, whatever you want to call it. And so suddenly it becomes a moral quandary, an ethical dilemma, where nobody's really wrong, but at the same time, he is still the antagonist, and you don't want him to win, because the film follows Miles. And thus, Miles' point of view is put forward as the one that's the most sympathetic. It's just really good writing in that regard, because if you just twist things slightly, suddenly Miguel's the hero, and Miles is just being selfish. On top of that, the animation, especially in terms of visual variety and the seamless blending of styles. And of course the action. It's all well done. All perfect, absurdly good. Like, action especially, it dominates this film completely and utterly. There are some fights that feel like they just stretch on forever. 25 minutes, 30 minutes. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it's how it felt in cinema, and yet it doesn't get boring. Because these scenes are so dynamic, with so much going on. Oh god, I can only imagine how tough it was to animate all that. Insanity, truly. This film, length aside, it's pretty close to being a masterpiece in my eyes. It's a top tier film, with top tier animation, top tier characterization, music, a good story that suffers due to length and the fact that it's clearly made to be a first part of a two-parter, but yeah, go see it, you won't regret it. More films like this, please, animation industry. God. Have we gotten to the point where Sony and DreamWorks are the top dogs in terms of quality? But yeah, with all that being said, these are just my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the film if you've seen it? You like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.